The orbital scan told a story of successful conquest. The virus had apparently done its job, and human civilization appeared to have suffered considerably, perhaps to the point of extinction. Admiral Krav stood at the center of the bridge, his massive frame imposing as he observed the holographic displays that flickered with data from Earth's surface. His skin, with its distinctive texture of dried soil and rock, caught the artificial lighting in a way that made him appear almost statuesque. The deep crevices and rough patches across his epidermis created complex patterns that shifted subtly as he breathed, each inhalation causing tiny flakes of dust to drift from his shoulders. It was a trait that had served his species well on their homeworld of Corthax, where their natural camouflage allowed them to blend seamlessly with the planet's arid canyons and weathered mountainsides. Here, aboard the sterile metallic confines of his flagship, the evolutionary advantage seemed almost comical, a walking boulder commanding a space fleet. His four eyes surveyed the bridge with indifference as his crew bickered over landing coordinates. Their voices, a mixture of grinding stone and shifting gravel, filled the command center as they debated the merits of various touchdown sites. Krav's uniform, specially tailored to accommodate his species' unique physiology, stretched tight across his broad chest where patches of his skin had hardened into something resembling armor plating. Navigator Strack approached with the characteristic shuffle of their kind, his feet, more like flexible stone paddles, scraping against the deck plating. The navigator's skin was lighter than Krav's, more sandstone to the Admiral's granite, and nervous moisture had begun to seep through the cracks in his epidermis, creating tiny mud trails down his face. "Admiral," Strack began, his voice like pebbles tumbling down a hillside, "we've identified an optimal landing zone in what the humans designated as Central Park. The area provides adequate space for our entire landing party and immediate access to multiple abandoned structures." He gestured toward the holographic display with a hand that looked as if it had been carved from bedrock. "We can begin testing these buildings immediately, determine if any of this human infrastructure is salvageable, or if we'll need to tear it all down for redevelopment." Krav barely glanced at the display. The minutiae of planetary reconstruction held no interest for him. His thoughts were already light years away, focused on the accolades that would surely follow this successful operation. The Dominion's High Council would have no choice but to acknowledge his value. A virgin world, stripped of its dominant species by their bioweapon, ready for colonization, all accomplished without losing a single soldier. His rocky features attempted what might have been a smile, though on his species it looked more like a geological fault line shifting. "Land where you see fit, Navigator," Krav rumbled, his voice rough as stone. "Just ensure we can extract some compelling footage for the Conquest report. The Council appreciates visual documentation of our victories." The descent through Earth's atmosphere was a spectacle worthy of any Conquest report. The fleet of 12 ships, each one a perfect example of Corthaxian superior engineering, cut through the clouds like massive stone arrows. From the bridge's viewport, Krav watched the planet's surface rush up to meet them. The blue oceans and green continents looked almost too vibrant compared to the muted browns and grays of Corthax. Through the atmospheric burn, he could make out the skeletal remains of human cities, empty streets, darkened buildings, and the complete absence of the electromagnetic signatures that would indicate a living civilization. The landing was textbook perfect. The ships touched down in formation, their landing struts crushing abandoned vehicles and park benches beneath their weight. The ground trembled under the mass of alien metal and stone, sending flocks of birds scattering from the trees. Apparently, the virus had been programmed to target only the dominant species. "Prepare the survey teams," Krav ordered, his voice echoing through the ship's communication system. "I want full structural analysis of the surrounding buildings within the hour." The preparation bay was the busiest he had ever seen it, as crew members gathered their equipment. The mobile scanners, each the size of a small boulder and designed to be carried by their species' considerable strength, were distributed among the teams. Weapons were mentioned almost as an afterthought. "Should we arm ourselves, Admiral?" asked Tactical Officer Gorth, his craggy features expressing what might have been uncertainty. Krav made a dismissive gesture that sent small particles of his outer layer drifting to the deck. "If it makes you feel better, take them, though I hardly think we'll be needing weapons to fight ghosts and empty buildings." A grinding chuckle spread through the assembled crew. The virus had never failed before. In over 30 conquered worlds, not once had a target species survived its tailored destruction. The survey team assembled in the main airlock, their rocky forms creating a sound like an avalanche in slow motion as they moved. Each member wore the standard expedition suit, not for environmental protection, as their silicon-based biology could withstand far harsher conditions than Earth could offer, but for equipment storage and communication. Krav led from the front, his massive form first to step onto Earth's soil. The abandoned city stretched before them, a ghostly monument to humanity's sudden absence. Skyscrapers reached toward the sky like grave markers, their windows dark and lifeless. The survey team moved in formation, their heavy footfalls creating a thunder-like noise as they marched toward the nearest tower. The sound echoed off the empty buildings, returning to them as ghostly reverberations. They had covered perhaps 300 meters when it began. The ground shook. It started as a subtle vibration, barely noticeable to a species accustomed to the geological instability of their homeworld. But it grew stronger, louder, more unnatural. Navigator Strack immediately activated his connection to the ship. "Seismic activity detected," he reported, his voice betraying the first hints of concern. "Magnitude increasing. This doesn't match any geological survey data from our orbital scans." Krav's four eyes swiveled independently, scanning the horizon in all directions. That's when he saw them, countless smoke trails rising from concealed positions throughout the city. His mind, honed by decades of military service, recognized the signatures immediately. Launch exhausts. "Defensive positions!" he roared, but his words were swallowed by the deafening sound of explosions. The fleet, their pride and joy, their ticket home, erupted in a chain of flashy blasts. 12 ships became 12 pillars of fire and debris in less than 10 seconds. The shockwave knocked several of the lighter crew members off their feet, their rocky forms clattering against the pavement like scattered stones. When the smoke began to clear, when their vision adjusted to the new reality of their situation, they saw them. Armored vehicles emerged from concealed positions, garage doors, camouflaged bunkers, even rising from what had appeared to be solid ground. Flying machines filled the sky, their rotors beating the air into submission. And among them, on foot and in vehicles, were humans. Very much alive humans. Armed humans. Humans who moved as one to surround the suddenly very vulnerable survey team. The crew members who managed to raise their weapons, those few who overcame their shock quickly enough to remember they were armed, were cut down instantly. Devastating fire from a dozen angles turned them into so much rubble before they could squeeze off a single shot. The message was clear. They had already lost. Krav found himself on his knees, though he couldn't remember falling. His four eyes focused on the human approaching him, a figure in military gear whose face was hidden behind a tactical helmet. The Admiral's voice, when he found it, was barely more than grinding sand. "The virus," he managed. "You should all be dead. The virus has never failed." The human removed the helmet, revealing a scarred face that spoke of survival against all odds. When the human smiled, it was without warmth. "Oh, the virus was quite something," the human said, voice propagating across the deadly silence that had fallen over the park. "Sophisticated, elegant even. We were impressed." The smile widened. "So impressed that we reverse-engineered it, made some improvements, and sent an upgraded version back to your homeworld. You know, as a thank you gift." Krav's rocky features couldn't pale, but something in his posture conveyed the same effect. The human continued gesturing to the surrounded aliens indifferently. "Good thing we have some test subjects now. We need to make sure version 2.0 works properly on your species before we check on how your homeworld is doing."